Hello, welcome. Namaste, everybody. I bow in gratitude to those of you joining me in the room, to those of you joining me on Zoom, and to those of you listening to the recording afterward. This is a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart, all about this 18-inch spiritual journey, which can sometimes take many lifetimes simply to travel from the head to the heart. I like to begin with a poem of my own as a lead-in to this week's topic. Have some time at the end for a short meditation, and finally some question and answer to close out this wonderful gathering. And today's topic is on cultivating kindness. And today's poem is called Shaped by the Shapeless. While a chisel can curve a stone, and hands can mold wet clay, we are shaped by the shapeless. The kindness that tied your shoes, the confusion of being lost that guided you back to somewhere safe. The timeless wisdom that broadens our mind, which will never return to its smaller dimensions. The teacher whose greatest impact came from them simply believing in us. Through music, we are moved. With words, we are touched. Love can crush us, but in its caring, it creates us in our truest version. The formless words, the ones born in the heart, but resting on the tip of your lips, whether said or swallowed inside, will decide everything. Let the gratitude for this divine day and all the marvels inside of it inflate you, expand you into pure floating light. Because in the end, when silence signals the end of the last song, we will know the untamed sea and wonder of our being can fit any form and would rather flow into the next open moment. I wanted to talk today about the cultivation of kindness. To me, this is a true foundation of our spiritual path. The Sanskrit word for meditation is bhavana, which means to cultivate or to grow. So when we do sit down and notice our breath, this isn't some abstract navel gazing. This is tending to the garden of the heart and the mind. Our spiritual practice is one of planting seeds of our values, of our intentions, and our aspirations, and watering them, shining light on them, so that they grow and they bear fruit in so many areas of our life. And I don't know about you, but I learned a lot of things in the education system through chemistry and history and biology and physics. But throughout all the education I've received in the academic world, I was never taught how to increase our capacity to be kind, to be compassionate, to be loving. And this is where we have the wisdom traditions, the contemplative traditions, the spiritual traditions, which offer a wide array of ways, practices, and methods to cultivate love, forgiveness, awe, wonder, and gratitude. So the Buddha himself said, as the farmer channels water to their land, so the wise one directs kindness and compassion to their own mind. So this metaphor of a garden is a common one. Just as the farmer channels water to their land, so too a wise person directs kindness and compassion to their own mind. And when you do plant a seed, it's so wonderful to see what comes up. So many leaves and flowers in a completely unique formation that you've never seen before, and that this world has never seen before. So too, as we open our heart, as we plant seeds of love, kindness, and compassion in our heart, It's so wonderful to watch it grow. It's so wonderful to see how the more we open our heart, the more we become open to new ways to love and new understandings of love. The poet Young Pueblo wrote this: Love is much bigger than relationships. Love is the way you heal yourself, the kindness you give others, the gentleness you give yourself in turbulent times, the space you hold for close friends, the intention with which you live in the present, and the energy that changes the world. Love is every moment that elevates the human experience and the small things that make life shine. So when we do hear that the Dalai Lama said that his religion is kindness, we can also investigate if we want to make our religion kindness, what might that look like? How might we go about cultivating kindness in our own hearts? And I wanted to talk about a few different ways and methods to cultivate kindness in our own hearts. And I think the first one, and probably the most important one, is to recognize the impact of our kind actions. The Buddha himself, again, wrote this: The fragrance of flowers drifts with the wind, the scents of sandalwood, jasmine, and lavender. But the fragrance of good actions goes further than the wind, encompasses the world, and even goes to the heavens. The implication here is that our simple and kind acts that we can do for other human beings takes us to the heavens. Our kind acts have a tremendous impact on the world. And I'm sure you have experienced this. Experience how the kind act of another human being really changed your life. It takes often just one teacher to really see the good in us, to really pay attention to us and be kind to us for our own love and light to blossom. I even remember myself when I was in first grade many years ago when my teacher complimented me on a bird that I had drawn on a poster board. I still remember that comment many years later. And I even remember a situation in my early 20s when I was at the dermatologist. And it was such a side comment. It can seem very silly. And I look back on it and it almost seems very silly. Where after meeting with the dermatologist, they were leaving the room and they were passing by the nurse walking in. And the dermatologist said to the nurse, "You can explain this to him. He's smart." And I was like, wow, this highly educated human being just said that I'm smart. And it's such an innocuous statement that a person can make. But I find this time and time again. We don't realize the impact of our actions and our words on others. And because our words and actions can mean so much, we should ensure that they are as kind, tender, and loving as possible. There is even a Japanese proverb that goes, one kind word can warm 3 winter months. Such a beautiful sentiment. One kind word can warm 3 winter months. So this is the first step of cultivating kindness. Recognize the impact that kind acts have on others. We shouldn't kick a man when he's down. He might get up. We might bear the fruit of bad actions. And at the same time, we can bear positive fruit of positive actions. Idris Shah offers the following story. A certain Bektashi dervish was respected for his piety and appearance of virtue. Whenever anyone asked him how he had become so holy, he always answered, I know what is in the Quran. One day, he had just given this reply to an inquirer in a coffee house when somebody asked, well, what is in the Quran? And this Bektashi dervish said, in the Quran, there are two pressed flowers and a letter from my friend Abdullah. I love that. I know what is in the Quran. Two pressed flowers and a letter from my friend Abdullah. It's a shame we don't write letters as much as we used to. The impact of a letter, a kind letter to another human being, is a physical memento that we can keep with us. And I love this practice of writing love notes. This is part of my own personal practice of writing little love notes to my friends. And it's inspiring how often, a number of years later, a friend who I've written a love note to will uncover the note that I had written and send me a very sweet message expressing appreciation for the appreciation that I had offered years before. So the law of karma essentially says that what goes around comes around. We will reap what we sow. The more kindness that we sow, the more kindness we will reap. So there's a longer story that goes as follows. One day, a middle school teacher is trying to go through her lesson plan, but the students are way too rowdy. So she stops and asks her students to list the names of all the other students in the room on two sheets of paper, leaving a space between each name. Then she told them to think of the nicest thing they could say about each of their classmates and write it down. It took the remainder of the class period to finish their assignment, and as the students left the room, each one handed in their papers. That Saturday, the teacher wrote down the name of each student on a separate sheet of paper and listed what everyone else said about that individual. On Monday, she gave each student their list. Before long, the entire class was smiling. Really? The teacher heard one student whisper. I never knew that I meant anything to anyone. Another student said, I didn't know others liked me so much. The students were happy with themselves and one another. The class year ended, and the group of students moved on. Several years later, when the students were now adults, one of them was killed in Vietnam. This is a bit of an old story. One of them was killed in Vietnam, and his teacher attended the funeral of one of the students. The church was packed with his friends. One by one, those who loved him took a last walk by the coffin, and the teacher was the last one to bless the coffin. As she stood there, one of the soldiers came up to her. Were you Mark's math teacher? He asked. She nodded yes. Then he said, Mark talked about you a lot. After the funeral, most of Mark's former classmates went together to lunch. Mark's mother and father were also there, wanting to speak with his teacher. We want to show you something, his father said, taking a wallet out of his pocket. They found this on Mark when he was killed. We thought you might recognize it. Opening the piece of paper, he carefully removed this paper that had obviously been taped, folded, and refolded many times. The teacher knew without looking that the papers were the ones on which she had listed all the good things each of Mark's classmates had said about him. Thank you so much for doing that, Mark's mother said. As you can see, Mark treasured it. All of Mark's former classmates started to gather around. Another precious student smiled rather sheepishly and said, I still have my list. It's in the top drawer of my desk at home. Another student's wife said, he asked me to put this in our wedding album. I have mine too, another student said. It's in my diary. Then Vicky, another classmate, reached into her pocketbook, took out her wallet, and showed her own worn and frazzled list to the group. I carry this with me at all times, she said. I think we all saved our lists. Tears rolled down the eyes of the humbled teacher. We encounter so many people in our lives, and it's a precious joy to see the good in all those journeys. So it's a lovely and heartwarming story about the impact that our kind actions and our kind words can have on one another. And this is what I found. Kindness enlivens us. It brings meaning to our lives. It's really hard to both do a kind act for another human being and receive a kind act from another human being without also creating connection. And as human beings, connection is foundational to our own happiness and well being. And Stephen Vincent Benet wrote this: Life is not lost by dying. Life is lost minute by minute, day by dragging day, in all the thousand small, uncaring ways. So that's one way to begin this cultivation of kindness, recognizing the impact that our actions have on others. And once we recognize the power of our own actions, then we take the backward step, the inward step, and we set our intention. This is the beginning of our path, setting our intention to come from a place of kindness. Now, the closest Sanskrit word to kindness and this feeling of warm-hearted friendliness to another human being is Maitri. In Pali, it is metta, the more common word that you might have heard. And metta is often translated as loving kindness. It's said to be where mindfulness meets the world with appreciation. It is also said to be a gentle rain. Just like when it rains, the rain doesn't discriminate where it lands. So too, our metta, our maitri, our loving kindness can touch everything that we see. The word itself is also closely related to friend. And our metta practice is intimately connected to this idea of brotherhood and sisterhood, a sense of kinship and connection with all human beings. And metta is one of the four divine abodes, one of the four immeasurables, one of the four noble qualities, along with compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We have loving kindness. It is said that when you embody these qualities, you become like a noble person. If you think of these as the divine abodes, it's almost like we have the qualities of God within ourselves. Right now, we have the capacity to live from a place of compassion, loving kindness, and sympathetic joy. And when we truly embody these qualities, we too become divine. So too, they are the four immeasurables. They can't be measured, which means there's no limit. There's no limit to how open the heart can become. And there's no limit to the kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy that we can experience for other sentient beings. And this tender, loving caring of compassion, kindness, and sympathetic joy all stem from a desire for others to be happy. If somebody that we love is suffering, our love turns into compassion and a desire for this person to be alleviated of their suffering. If someone we love and a friend we love is in a neutral point of their life, our desire turns into loving kindness and a desire for them to be happy. So it's important to also recognize that if we want somebody to be happy and we want to act on that and help them to be happy, it will help to have an understanding of who this person is and what makes them happy. You cannot have love without understanding. You cannot have kindness without understanding, because the same thing that might make somebody very happy might make somebody else very sad. And your only way to differentiate between what might make one person happy and another person sad is your own understanding of these people. What do they like and what do they not like? Another story for you. A woman goes to her husband and says, "Wow, last night I had this beautiful dream where I had this gorgeous diamond necklace. What do you think it means?" The husband says, "You will find out tonight." That evening, the husband comes home with a rectangular present wrapped with a bow and hands it to his wife. Excitedly, she tears open the present and finds a book entitled How to Interpret Dreams. So you cannot have love without understanding. So that's another method, another way to cultivate kindness is simply to set the intention. So we can begin every day by setting the intention to see this world through the eyes of compassion and to be kind to others. And at the end of the day, we can reflect. So just like we begin our yoga practice by setting our intention, we can finish our practice by reflecting. How well in that hour of living with intention did we live up to our expectations? If we sit down to meditate for 30 minutes to find peace in the heart and mind, we can reflect 30 minutes later. How much did we increase our capacity to be peaceful and to find calm? So, this is important. Every action that we do, we can come from a place of positive intention, and then we can check in afterwards. How fully did we live from this intention? So, Leo Buscaglia offers the following questions we can ask ourselves at the end of our days. Is anyone a little happier because I came along today? Did I leave any concrete evidence of my kindness, any sign of my love? Did I try to think of someone I know in a more positive light? Did I help someone to feel joy, to laugh, or at least to smile? Have I attempted to remove a little of the rust that is corroding my relationships? Have I forgiven others for being less than perfect? Have I forgiven myself? Have I learned something new about life, living, or love? Have I gone through the day without fretting over what I don't have and celebrating the things that I do have? And Leo Buscaglia offers the following advice. If you're not satisfied with your answers, it's okay. Tomorrow, you get to start all over again. If you will it, this is one quiz you can never fail. So through intention and through reflection, we can bring more kindness into our life. And those are very amicable methods, very nice methods. And another way is a little bit harder, requires a little bit more gumption, a little bit more discipline, a little bit more courage. Because another way to cultivate kindness is by getting in touch with our own suffering and our own pain. Meditation is all about widening our window of tolerance, to borrow a psychological term. In other words, it is increasing our capacity to be with, to be fully present to this life of 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And through getting in touch with this life of 10,000 sorrows, rather than pushing away or numbing or rejecting this fundamental aspect of our experience, by welcoming in the unwelcome, to borrow Pema Chodron's phrase, by welcoming in the unwelcome, that also increases our capacity to be kind. Naomi Shihab Nye put it this way in her poem, Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. what you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore, only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread, only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Hmm. So Naomi Shihab Nye makes a very valuable point in that poem that we're not here to get in touch with our suffering, to wallow in it, to think, why me? Why is this pain, suffering, grief, and loss happening to me? But to connect it to the suffering of others, to recognize whatever challenging emotions that you are experiencing right now, you are not experiencing alone. Countless other human beings and sentient beings are also feeling the same thing, have felt the same thing, and will feel the same thing. So, getting in touch with our own suffering is a wonderful step in order to recognize the suffering in the world and the suffering of other sentient beings. Which brings us to the next step to cultivating kindness by recognizing that everybody is suffering. If you scratch the surface of anybody's life, underneath of it, you will find suffering. So even Plato said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." And this is the first noble truth. There is suffering in life. There is dukkha. There is sorrow, grief, pain, and dissatisfaction. It's a fundamental aspect of life. From the richest person that you know to the poorest, every human being is suffering in some way. And in Buddhism, there are four types of suffering: birth, sickness, old age, and death. And through getting in touch with these aspects of suffering, we increase our capacity to be kind. And it's that final, that ultimate suffering, the death of ourselves and others, that also can be an incredible gateway to kindness. Recognizing that none of us will get out here alive, that we are all going to die, and thus our time on this earth is limited. And because the time on this earth is limited, we better make the best use of it we can. We better not waste it. So Stephen Grillett says this: "I shall pass through this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again." Mhm. So to summarize, we can cultivate kindness by recognizing the impact of our kind actions, by setting an intention, by reflecting on how well we have lived our intention, through getting in touch with our own suffering as a step, to recognizing that everyone is suffering, including the ultimate suffering of death, that we are going to die, that our time on this earth is limited. So, therefore, the best use of that time is by becoming the most loving, tender, and kind hearted person that we can possibly be. And I'll offer one more final way to bring just a bit more kindness into our life. And that is by seeing how we are all connected. That kindness to others is kindness to ourselves. Kindness to ourselves is kindness to others. In many spiritual traditions, there is always a non dual branch. Some of them are really focused on non duality, while in some other spiritual and religious traditions, the non dual traditions are kind of pushed off to the side. People would prefer you not know about them. But it's important to think about how we might integrate this non dual perspective. We first recognize how the mind creates separation and division in the world. We have an understanding of the world that is done through comparison, through difference. We have opposites. And we can only know the north side of a mountain via the recognition that there is a south side. We only know left from right. We only know light from darkness. We only know the spiritual from the material. And it's the non-dual, the not two perspective that presents a unification amongst these seemingly opposite concepts that the mind creates and that we ourselves live in. So, one of the biggest dualities that we find ourselves in is self and other, is I and other. As soon as you define yourself as a separate and isolated being in the world, you then create a world of other sentient beings. And along with light and dark, up and down, we can easily look at human relationships and divide them up into victim and perpetrator, into oppressor and oppressed. But the non dual perspective does not see it this way. The non dual perspective sees somebody that does violence in the world is doing violence to themselves. Somebody that is capable of violence is doing violence to themselves because inside their own body, heart, and mind, there is much anger, hatred, ill will, envy, and jealousy. All impurities that obscure our true loving nature. So, when we drop into this non dual understanding, we realize that there is no other, there is no separation. Suddenly, kind acts to other human beings is like our right hand bandaging our left. The right hand doesn't bandage the left hand and say, all right, you owe me, buddy. You better give back what I have given you. It's just a natural response of recognizing the unity of seemingly separate things. So, helping others is helping ourselves. Helping ourselves is helping others. So, through recognizing how everything is connected, violence to others is violence to ourselves. So, whether you are having trouble being kind to yourself, we can cultivate self love through loving others. And if you're having trouble loving others, you can begin by loving yourself because there is no separation in this understanding. So, as we are being kind to other human beings, we can be kind to all sentient beings, realizing that we share this entire tapestry of life as one living, breathing apparatus. So, one of my favorite poets, Joy Harjo, she wrote this to pray. You open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know, except in moments steadily growing and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky and wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. What a beautiful line. Swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this, and breathe, knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion, like eagle rounding out the morning inside of us. We pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. Hmm. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Hmm. So, with that, we can close out with another short meditation with the intention to plant the seeds of metta, loving kindness, in our own hearts. Coming to a comfortable seat, straightening the spine, relaxing the shoulders. Take a few moments to deepen the breath. And let us extend metta kindness, loving kindness, or metta to ourselves, using our metta phrases. May I be happy. May I be free. May I touch great and natural peace. May my heart and mind awaken. May I feel the natural joy of being alive. Allowing the warmth of tender-hearted kindness in the heart warm your own body. And thinking of others, even strangers, we can feel a sense of kinship too, with a universal brotherhood and sisterhood. Thinking of friends, family, loved ones, acquaintances, and even strangers, and extending our loving kindness to them. May you be happy. May you be free. May you touch great and natural peace. May your heart and mind awaken. May you feel the natural joy of being alive. Letting the warmth in your heart emanate out to touch others with kindness and a desire for others to be happy, free, and well. And finally, expanding our love to all sentient beings, all the creatures, animals of this world and beyond, all the little creatures, all the medium-sized creatures, all the big creatures, recognizing our oneness in this tapestry of life, from the eagle flying high in the sky to the worms burrowing in the earth. May you be happy. May you be free from all suffering. May you find peace. letting your metta be a gentle rain touching every part of this earth. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. May we see our own brotherhood and sisterhood with all sentient beings. And may we see each moment as precious, special, full of possibility. Our time on this earth is limited. Let us make it as kind and loving as possible. It is through this intention we can change the world. I honor that place in you where the entire universe dwells. I honor the place in you of love, light, truth, and wisdom. I honor that place in you when you're in that place and I'm in that place. We are one. Namaste.